I think any person would like to believe that there are no conspiracies, that everything that goes on in this country is on the up and up, that there is no collusion, or there's nothing like conspiracy happening in our government, the media, or even the sports that we all enjoy. The definition of a conspiracy is an agreement to perform together an illegal, wrongful, or subversive act. If you listen to the mainstream media, they dismiss almost everything against the status quo as a conspiracy theory, or the people that go against the status quo as a conspiracy nut. If you listen to the media or the government, it's almost like the word conspiracy needs to be taken out of the dictionary, because it's not possible for people in the media and government to conspire in any way. Like their DNA does not allow them to conspire to do anything that's not on the level. I guess to find out where you stand on the conspiracy issue is this. You have to ask yourself this question. Do you believe there are people out there that will do whatever it takes to gain power or manipulate situations for personal gain? Because if you don't, then for you, it's impossible to believe that people can lie about anything, and that any conspiracy is simply an impossibility. And conspiracies don't exist, they're just fabrications that crazy people talk about. Crazy people talk about. You need to take a good look around you and wake up to what's really going on in this country.
World War I, II, Korea, Vietnam, the Gulf Wars, and our current war on terror has cost the lives of hundreds of thousands of people and the destruction of millions of tons of irreplaceable resources, but have yet to solve any of our social problems.
We inform the governments that they are actually our administrative arm and that we know what's best for us. We don't actually need governing. We simply need honest people to manage the infrastructure for us. That's what we employ them to do, and they're forgetting that that's what their place in society is. You can look at all of these alternative ways of doing things, and that's all very good, and all of these methods need to be employed. But you also need to address the problem that has created the need for you to implement these alternate measures. If man was left to be free, and if things were done properly to begin with, we wouldn't need to be employing any alternate measures. We would be free to do what needs to be done without the hindrance of corrupt legislation that prevents humanity from being humanity and serves only to empower corporations and the controllers of the monetary system. Very few of these films ever address the money supply. And the money supply is truly the head of the snake. The first thing we need to do to improve society at all is to take the interest off money. That's the first step.
My idea is you allow people to work and keep the fruits of their labor. The money stays in their house or in their state.
And more important, there is no master race. There are people who may find these ideas convenient, but science cannot support them. There is no scientific proof that there is any correlation between a man's racial characteristic and his native ability or character. In all racial groups, we find the same range of potentialities. We find idiots and geniuses. We find criminals and philanthropists. We must judge each man as an individual and not by the color of his skin or his eyes or by the length of his nose. And remember that there is no master race. That is a scientific truth. Anyone who tells you otherwise is lying.
What's going on with the global situation, the leaders of our world are currently working very hard to ensure that the demise of the world is brought about very rapidly. The leaders of our world are currently working very hard to ensure that the demise of the world is brought about very rapidly.
A part of that plan, of course, is to induce the gradual surrender of sovereignty, piece by piece and step by step, to various international organizations, of which the United Nations is the outstanding but far from the only example. Greatly expanded government spending for every conceivable means of getting rid of ever larger sums of money as wastefully as possible. Higher and then much higher taxes. An increasingly unbalanced budget despite the higher taxes. Wild inflation of our currency. Government controls of prices, wages, and materials, supposedly to combat inflation. Greatly increased socialistic controls over every operation of our economy and every activity of our daily lives. This is to be accompanied, naturally and automatically, by a correspondingly huge increase in the size of our bureaucracy and in both the cost and reach of our domestic government. Far more centralization of power and the practical elimination of our state lines. Steady advance of federal aid to and control over our educational system, leading to complete federalization of our public education. A constant hammering into the consciousness of the horror of modern warfare. The beauties and the absolute necessity of peace. Peace always on communist terms, of course.
Under the guise of acting in our best interests, we have allowed our own inaction as commodities by big pharmaceutical companies, culminating in the creation of a world today where 1 in 2.7 people is now affected by cancer, either personally or via a loved one, when 100 years ago the average rate stood at 1 in 100 people. And this is the world that we have allowed to be created around us by our failure to see the power and potential we each hold individually. Our failure to face the shadow within us, our failure to connect with those around us, and our willingness to be ruled by ourselves. This is the world that we have allowed to be created around us through our own inaction, This is the world that we have allowed to be created around us. This is the world that we have allowed to be created around us.